Morning and welcome to another morning coffee, 10 a.m. on the 2nd of June. Wow, it's incredible how time flies. As usual, I'm not drinking coffee, which is kind of really counterintuitive for me. I'm drinking my green ginger again, which I really do like. I kind of prefer it to ordinary tea, but I hope you've got your tea with you and that you're raring to go for the day. If anybody's online, just say hi, let me know you're there, and I can begin with some of the parish news that I have, at least a couple of updates that you might want to hear. And even if you don't, I'm going to tell you anyway. So, what does it say? Resistance is futile, and it's a dog. Well, that's obviously true. So, what is going on in the parish? Well, I've just written a few notes. Normally, the anchor would be out by now, but because of a few technical difficulties yesterday, the first one being that I hadn't fired up my Windows PC for a week, so it needed to download 1 billion updates, and then the security software needed to update and then needed to restart. Good morning, Jeannie, and good morning, Karen. It's good to see you. And Jamie, good morning to you all. Yes, so normally when you do updates, it's just slow. So that took a couple of hours, believe it or not, and it's not a slow machine. And then it didn't work properly. I couldn't load the program that I used to run the to create the anchor. So that was annoying. And then when I got it working, for some reason, Dropbox didn't work. And so I had to uninstall, reinstall, didn't work. So I had to uninstall and reinstall, and then it worked. But it was downloading, I don't know, 18,000 different things, which, as far as I was aware, were all still on my computer anyway. So after all that, I managed to do some work, but it was still doing really weird things. So I got to the point where rather than getting a hammer to my computer, I thought, I'm just going to give it a rest. I'm just going to walk away slowly backwards and just see what happens the next day. So my joy is to switch on my PC later on after this and see what happens. It's kind of weird. This past week or so, I've been plagued with computer problems. So I have a new to me Mac Mini. The old one is, well, I'm going to use that as a Windows machine. I'm going to be running Windows on it. The PC, it's getting old. I suppose it needs to be laid to rest. Who knows? So it's more than likely that on Thursday the anchor will be appearing. So that's my self-imposed deadline for it. So I apologise for the delay in that. And thank you, Jamie, regarding the Sunday service. Yes, it was. Yes, I think in 20 odd years, it is the first time that I've ever forgotten the gospel. So that joins the queue with having forgot the creed sometimes. At least once I've forgotten the confession. And so I wonder if there'll ever be a time when I forget the sermon. Well, you can only cross your fingers and hope on that one. Let's see what happens. But thanks a lot. Thanks, Jamie. So the first thing, the anchor should be distributed by Thursday or on Thursday. I'd also like everybody to remember in your prayers some of our parishioners who are struggling at the moment. We do have a few people who are out of work. We do have people with some health conditions. A friend of mine is seriously ill in hospital at the moment, awaiting a heart transplant. So please remember him in your prayers. And so there's a lot going on in terms of the dynamics of the parish and what's going on in people's lives. And as this pandemic continues, I'm sure it become more of a burden for some people than others. So lots of prayers, please. Also, I've written my article for the Anchor, so that's ready to go into the Anchor. And it's basically about where we are in the scheme of things regarding opening up the church to more people and the services. And there's no secret about that. The bishop has made it clear that he has high expectations in terms of hygiene and social distancing, and taking as many precautions as we need to ensure the safety of those people who do turn up to church. And that being the case, I've worked out so that we can have 44 people in the pews, in the body of the church as a maximum, and that will maintain social distancing. I'll be splitting the church kind of in two. So if you imagine me looking down the church, there will be the south side and the north side, and we'll be using those side doors, the south and north doors, for people to come in. There will also be assigned seating, and I'm doing that because if anything, God forbid, should happen that one of our people does get ill, then the contact tracing needs to be something that we can be absolutely certain about. So if I can say, if anybody turns up and says, we need to know who this person's been in contact with, I can say, this is where that person sat. These were the people with them. That's the door they came in and out of. And they can work from absolutely solid information. And that being the case, we really are trying to make it as airtight as possible, and as it's not foolproof, as safety conscious as possible. Masks will be required during the service. We have gone on to that over the past few weeks. And you'll have noticed that I'm putting a glove on now. I'm putting a mask on now and a glove. And boy, did I struggle with that glove on Sunday. It just would not go on. So I don't know if you could tell. It looked like some kind of horror movie hand as I distributed communion. Thank goodness I managed to be able to do it. Again, it's a safety protocol. And we're doing what we can. There will be no coffee hour or anything like that afterwards. So that's kind of normal. The other thing is that having recognised there are a number of people who are 8 o'clockers and a number of people who are 10:30ans, if we can have at least 10 people for each service, then I am willing to do both services. So you heard it here first. For those people who are die-hard Right One people, the 8 o'clockers, if there are at least 10 people who are willing to attend every Sunday, then yes, I'll be putting one on. It's just kind of diminishing returns, really, because if we are trying to sort of meet together again, it's not really much of a meeting if there's only 3 people at a service and then the other one has 44 people. So I hope you understand why I would want 10 as a kind of minimum number. It's kind of the minimum I'm used to, apart from having a completely empty church. And it does help with the vibe of the service. I would have hoped that this went without saying, but it seems not to be the case. In terms of where we are with the live streaming, in my mind, at least, what we have tried to do is to ensure that it has disrupted your normal worship pattern as little as possible, even if you can't go to church. So when we couldn't do the live streams, the 10 of us who were allowed in the church, we arrived early, plenty early. We recorded the service early so that we could get it out there and stream the recording online on Facebook and YouTube by 10 o'clock or as near as possible. Now, we managed to do that all but one time. And but then we will be beholden to what happens when that video gets to YouTube and Facebook, and because there sometimes was a delay and it wouldn't appear until 5-10 minutes. I suppose it gets in a queue of a myriad number of other videos, and then it takes its turn before it appears online. Even Facebook and YouTube only have so much bandwidth, so things like that do happen. I'm saying all this because we really have tried to put ourselves out in terms of trying to make your lives as what's the opposite of word, as easy as possible, so that if you're used to going to church at 10:30 or 8 o'clock, we kind of met in the middle for 10 o'clock. Yes, I know it's not in the middle, but you kind of know what I mean. And so I must say it's been really disappointing, to say the least, that people haven't responded in the way I thought. That people haven't thought, well, this is Sunday, I usually go to church at X time, and the church is live streaming at such and such, so I will be in front of my whatever, computer, tablet, phone, whatever you use, and I will share with all my church family. Because that isn't the case. We're getting a kind of low number during the live stream. And it's kind of sad that people would think that they've got something else, like maybe stay in bed or I don't know what, rather than take the opportunity to know that X number of people are sharing in this experience all at the same time. So please, if you know somebody who prefers to stay in bed or go shopping or do something which replaces their normal worship time, let them know. It will be in the anchor, by the way. So, yeah, I just don't get it. I really don't. Especially since I know that some clergy, both in the UK and in the US, couldn't even be bothered recording their services on the day. They just did them some other time, because who's going to know? And then just dropped it. You can actually set up YouTube and Facebook to schedule services, so that you say 10 o'clock, okay, it will just appear at 10 or roundabout. So yeah, we're not phoning this in. We're trying to do it to the best of our ability. So please, put some effort in on your side. And I know a lot of you are. I'm just sort of calling out those who haven't. And I really don't know why. It just feels really odd to me that you wouldn't do your normal thing and be around for the live streaming. All right, so those are the things, the anchor, remembering our parishioners. And Jamie, please give me a call. And let's see what we can do. And the expectations for live streaming. Now, there's a lot going on in this country, a huge amount going on in this country. So I thought it has to be responded to. I mean, the church, as in the Episcopal Church and other denominations, have already begun to respond. But before I start, I want to give you a little bit of background about myself and the ministry I've been involved in and experienced, because some of you will know this and many of you won't. I began my ordained ministry in the Diocese of Manchester in the UK, in a town called Bolton. And they're absolutely great people. It was a very normal working class parish, again, full of great people. But as with most places, if not every place, it had its challenges. I lived in a house on the main road. And it was a main road that was busy enough that I could only park at the front of my house only certain hours of the day. And otherwise I had to park right at the back. I had no front yard. It was just all pavement. Probably the pavement, the sidewalk was bigger than this room in width. And so I was used to having people coming up and down. And as soon as people knew that I lived there, I became somebody who would come and contact, for help, for advice, just to chew the fat, whatever. It also became the place. It wasn't just me, because my boss, the parish priest, the vicar, was also, he lived right next door to the church. And as is pretty normal for Church of England clergy and Roman Catholic clergy, if people know where you live, they make calls for all sorts of reasons. So what was my experience there? Well, for the most part, it was incredible. It was one of the best training grounds I could have had. And God bless Father Brian Finley, who sadly died this past week, for putting up with me for 5 years as I did my curacy. I learned a great deal from him. He was an absolute man of faith and integrity, and I couldn't have wished for anybody better. He was also somebody who recognized that I needed to be pushed to do things. That was the kind of introverted, shy side of me. And so he would just announce right at the last moment, "Oh, by the way, Father, you're preaching today." And this is, to me, who was just scared to death of preaching, even if he had a bunch of notes. And so he pushed me, and it was good for me. There were other experiences that were kind of weird. For example, I figured out that there was a drug dealer up the road from me who lived above a barber's shop. He was in a little apartment, and news got out, and I contacted the police about this. And the police, in their stupidity, just turned up with all the bells and lights flashing. And so this guy, I don't know how, but pretty soon knew that I was the snitch. Well, when you're in a parish, these people are your people. And I didn't want a drug dealer sort of harassing people, causing people to become addicts or anything. So I did the right thing. So imagine my surprise one night when I'm walking the dog and I got shot at. Yes, it's quite unusual to be shot at in the UK. And it's a kind of surreal experience, which really didn't hit me till the next day. And the police, they were absolutely useless. So that was that. But also, I got people who were obviously addicted to drugs, very, very sad, who were trying to rip me off. So you kind of got used to this cycle of despair and people seeing you as, because you got a little white piece of plastic in your shirt, you must be an easy mark. You must be somebody who's just gonna, "Oh, you want money?" And you've come up with a really convoluted excuse as to why I should give it to you. "Sure, why not? Here you go." So I was there 5 years, and then I moved to become the vicar myself. And I really didn't know. There's a world of difference between being shielded by your boss, who is the vicar, and you as a curate going around making tons and tons of mistakes, while the vicar puts out all the fires you've created. And then you becoming the vicar, where you are solely responsible for, as they say in the Church of England, the cure of the souls of this parish, which was 14,000 people. It included a lot of Muslims. And from the get-go, the church and myself personally were under attack. I've lost count, basically, of how many times I've been physically attacked. It's been from verbal abuse to balloons filled with dye that have been thrown at me, to stones, to people coming at me with baseball bats. And it wasn't fun. And all the while, I'm trying to understand why this was going on. Part of it was the location of the church, but it seemed to be more than that, and it was difficult to comprehend. Now, I think it was March of 2001. I think I'm right there, when there was a riot, a so-called race riot. If you go to the Oldham Chronicle, or you just put in race riots Oldham, that's Oldham, you will see pictures of cars on fire and stuff like that. And in the background, you will see my old church, St. Mark with Christchurch Glodwick, which is spelled Glodwick, Glodwick. I'm giving you this information because this is true, and I still have quite a lot of photographs myself. The riots, nobody's really sure what caused the riots, but they had a racial component. It was a local Muslim youth, and they were attacking the police for whatever reason. And then the white people got involved. The white people of the parish. And then the neo-Nazis got involved, which was quite strong in that area. White supremacists. And it was quite devastating. I couldn't use my church one Sunday. Miraculously, for the first time, there was no damage done, but the rubble and the burned out cars around my church bore witness to what had gone on there. And it seemed to be that the neo-Nazis who started making contact with me saw in me an ally, that this was done by foreigners. They were Muslims, they were this, that, and the other. Remember, this is before 9/11. And so, I would be on their side because, well, look at me. Well, I'm not on their side because Christianity isn't, intrinsically racist. It's only the people who follow it who can sort of bring a racist edge to it. And I was kind of stuck as to what to do. Meanwhile, with all this going on, the area bishop decided he would get involved, and he set up a meeting with some local Muslims, and he bypassed me, which he shouldn't have done, because it is my parish. Imagine, some guy in a purple dress turns up and starts spouting about this, that piece, rapprochement, that kind of stuff. And who is this guy? They don't know him, but they do know me because I'm there day in, day out, wandering the parish. And I thought it was a bit much for the bishop just to sort of try and bypass me and set up this meeting, and I let him know. So I got included on this meeting. And it was okay. It was a lot of words and, promises, but there was no real depth to what went on. In the meantime, I'd gone around the parish and tried to see as many of the imams as I could to sort of say, is there anything we can do? Anything that we can sort of put out together as a joint communique that says, that there's something going on here and it's deeper than what seems to be the case. A lot of youths who are having a riot. Well, it really didn't go down very well, and so the meeting came and went. There was some reportage, and I was still getting pressure because the white supremacists decided that they were going to have their own parade, a protest march. And again, I was still being pushed to do that. So I thought, what is the one thing I can do which tells these people that this is wrong and that I am not on their side anyway at all. So I reached out to the local Jewish community and got in touch with a man who had been a survivor at Auschwitz and set up for him to come and speak to the parish in the parish hall. And it was an absolutely incredible event. It really was, because here's a man who'd actually lived through the horrors of the Holocaust. And he was giving us a first-hand account. He was old, he was frail. I don't think I've ever had to turn a PA system up so much to be heard, so he could be heard. The parish hall was packed. The outside was packed. There was one reporter. And she interviewed me, and she was from the Los Angeles Times. Go figure. Well, you can imagine that I was a lost cause for the neo-Nazis then, the white supremacists, and they just stopped getting in touch with me. And the whole thing eventually fizzled out. Now, I stayed there until I came over here, so I still had a few more years to be abused and sworn at and have things thrown at me. And I had once I got out of that situation, and believe me, I did not enjoy it, and my frustration was a mile high. But it wasn't until I came here and started to be able to reflect in a way that allowed me some peace and freedom to reflect without sort of knowing that every time I opened the door, I could experience it all again. What I ended up with thinking is that in the so-called multicultural Britain, there were still real divides going on. And I was trying to put myself in the heads of these young Muslims. They were in the 20s for the most part. These weren't little kids. They weren't sort of teenagers going through their adolescence or anything like that. Fight the system. Ah. This was young adults, most of them at college, if not going into professional lines of work. And they were frustrated. And their frustration had many different levels. On the surface, you could see, well, there were Muslims, and, well, Muslims equals Sharia law, which equals domination, blah, blah, blah. Nah, not at all. More was this kind of second level, was when they went home, most of the people who lived there had come from Pakistan, and they brought Pakistan with them, which is fine because, I mean, during the colonial period, the British just turned up and exported English, English everything. So why not bring your culture with you? I mean, in the church, we had some Indian Christians, and they brought their saris, and they used to dress up the statue of Our Lady in beautiful clothes of colors I'd never even imagined. And it was great to see Christianity being kind of internationalized for us, because we can be so parochial. But these young men had been brought up in the English school system. They were going to English colleges. They looked out and saw the world with a British perspective of trying to get on in life. They spoke English, but then went home, and there was this contrast between who they were at home and what the religion said, what the religion of their parents said, versus who they wanted to be out in the world. But when people saw them, they saw a Muslim. And that was the major characteristic. That was the thing which marked them off. A Muslim equals you can't trust them, equals terrorist, equals they may kill us. Live with that. Live with the fact that you see yourself as British, that you want to get on in the British way of life. Yes, you may have a different understanding of society because of your religion. And yet all people do is look at you, and then they decide who you are. How long is you going to do that? How many months, weeks, years are you going to put up with that before it gets too much? And that's the way I'm coming to this latest murder, George Floyd. The frustration that's boiled over and onto the stove, which is already red hot, and created all that's happening today. Now, I have to say that I am not condoning any of the looting and the violence, which seems to now be a bolted-on part of every form of protest. There are those who, for want of a better word, are professional anarchists. They are professional rioters. They will infiltrate into any peaceful protest and bring violence and destruction to it. So I am not talking about those people. I'm not talking about those people who think this is a good time under cover of a protest to break into the local sportswear store and start stealing all the sneakers, or with every riot there's always a picture somewhere of somebody running out of an electronics store with a huge television. I mean, that's been going on for decades. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about those people who have had enough because they have been racially profiled. They do not feel that they belong in this society, even though they've got more right than me. That don't get on in things because, well, you look at them. They are this, this, and this. The stereotypes write themselves. And if you think about it in those kinds of layers, then these protests, from my perspective, become understandable. They've had enough. Now, why now? Well, I don't know about you, but when I saw the video, the two videos now, of what happened with the gentleman, George Floyd, it, it's just harrowing. It really is. There is, before, when we've seen these deaths occur, there's always been some kind of struggle. There's always been an enormous number of police trying to, I don't know the word is really, let's not placate, overpower one individual. And so that struggle has made what has happened, if it doesn't justify it, but, well, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. With George Floyd, there is no struggle. We do hear the words, and we have that searing image of an absolute lack of concern from the policeman who's got his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. It wouldn't surprise me if he was sort of flicking through his phone and thought it might be a good time for a selfie. It looked that unconcerned. Now, out of this, and I think that is that image, that callous, unfeeling image, and the other people just standing around going, hey, is there a human there, or is it, because they didn't treat him as a human. And it is just appalling. And I think it's this absolute the calmness and that brought this death about, the callousness which has triggered where we are now. And quite rightly, the coloured community has just had enough. They've had enough of being racially profiled. They've had enough of being thought of as second-class citizens, having no voice. And yeah, it's that bad. So here we are. We're in a place where there are riots taking place. Well, not riots, protests taking place. Peaceful protests, which then convert into riots. We have cases where the police are given they're told to have their body cameras on and then don't. Now, what do we say about the police? They are to protect and serve. Who are they protecting when they have the body cameras off? Who are they serving? And what laws are they trying to sort of maintain when they do that kind of thing? There is something definitely wrong with how police either work as individuals or their training. Something needs to be done about that. So there was news last night of, I don't even know what, day 3 maybe of the protests turning violent, and then we had this incredible moment last night when all the media were summoned to the White House lawn, I assume, and then they had to hang around a while, and then the president came out and did his spiel. Meanwhile, they could hear a lot going on in the background, the reporters. And then they went for a walk, and that walk took them to St. John's Episcopal Church, where the president did a photo op for which he was rightly condemned. And First, I'm going to read some of the reporting on this, if I can find it. This is from The Guardian. It's a British paper, but I think they have an American edition now. Now, I'm having to look through the camera to read this, so please bear with me. Well, I can just move it over a bit, that might help. The Episcopal Bishop of Washington, D.C. has said she was outraged, quote unquote, after officers used tear gas to clear a crowd of peaceful protesters from near the White House to make way for Donald Trump. Minutes after speaking in the Rose Garden about the importance of, quote, law and order, unquote, to quell the unrest over the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police, Trump walked across the street to St. John's Episcopal Church, where every American president since James Madison has worshipped. But not before police used tear gas and force to clear the streets for Trump's photo opportunity. Once he arrived at St. John's, Trump held up a Bible that read, God is love. I don't know what that means, because the video I saw just saw him hold up a Bible while posing in front of the church's sign. And I'm going to probably mispronounce this name. The Right Reverend Marion Buddy, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, told the Washington Post, quote, I am the Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington and was not given even a courtesy call that they would be clearing, then in square parenthesis, the area with tear gas so they could use one of our churches as a prop. That's the end of the quote. The article continues, Trump's message is at odds with the values of love and tolerance espoused by the church, Budd said, before describing the president's visits as an opportunity to use the church and a Bible as a, quote, backdrop. Quoting her again, let me be clear. I'm just going to stop the quote there. What is it with politicians and sort of high clergy now that they have to put these qualifiers at the beginning of sentences? I am telling you. Are you really? Let me be clear. Okay, well, speak clearly and you will have done. Anyway, open quote again. Let me be clear. The president just used a Bible, the most sacred text of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and one of the churches of my diocese without permission, as a backdrop for a message antithetical to the teachings of Jesus, close quote. She told CNN. Open quote again. We align ourselves with those seeking justice for the death of George Floyd and countless others. And I just can't believe what my eyes have seen, she added. Quote again, I don't want President Trump speaking for St. John's. We so disassociate ourselves from the messages of this president, she told the Washington Post. Quote again, we hold the teachings of our sacred text to be so grounding to our lives and everything we do. And it is about love of neighbour and sacrificial love and justice. Other religious leaders echoed her comments. Presiding Bishop Michael Curry, primate of the Episcopal Church, accused the president of using the church and Bible for, quote, partisan political purposes, close quote. He added, quote, for the sake of George Floyd, for all who have wrongly suffered, and for the sake of us all, we need leaders to help us to be one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. Now, people who know me know that bishops, they're a necessary evil. God called them into being, and that's good enough for me. So what they're saying is, it reminds us of who we are as Christians, that we stand up for the cause of justice, and we cannot use our holy book to pretend that what we do, how we act, is verified by those words, when obviously what we do and how we act and what we say isn't. And for those of you, again, who've known me for a long time, you will know that when I was interviewed, I was asked, do I preach politics? And I said, only when politics comes into religion. And this is definitely one of those cases. Now, the bit about asking permission and this, that, and the other, it's kind of by the by. But I have one question. What was that walk to St. John's Episcopal Church, or any church, and the holding of a Bible up supposed to do? Well, I suppose I have another question. What does it mean? Because for the life of me, I have zero idea. If you remove that backdrop and whatever he said doesn't make any more sense than and you move the Bible, it doesn't mean anything. And yeah, it just seems like a horrible photo op. Now, let's bring it nearer to home. This is from Fox News. And we have a tweet from one of our own senators, Marco Rubio. And this is what he said. Many in the media fell for the calculated and deliberate tactics of professional agitators. They knew the street needed to be cleared before 7 p.m. curfew, but they deliberately stayed to trigger police action and get the story they wanted that, and then there's more quotes here, police attacked peaceful protesters. Now, the thing is that the media didn't fall for any calculated and deliberate tactics of professional agitators. They just went to go and do as they were asked by the White House to go to a press conference that was going to take place at 6 o'clock or something like that. And if you want deliberation and calculation, it came from the White House, who, while all those reporters were there, missed a lot of the opportunities to see what was going on in the streets because they started clearing before the 7 p.m. curfew, and that is a fact. So the tactics here are nothing to do with the media. So, Mr. Rubio, you're wrong. His second thing, they knew the street needed to be cleared before 7 p.m. Yes, so did all the people. So why was it being cleared at 6:30? So, Mr. Rubio, you're wrong again. But they, I'm assuming following the logic of his tweet, they means still the media, deliberately stayed to trigger police action and get the story they wanted, that police attacked peaceful protesters. Well, the fact is that for the vast majority of reporters were watching the president, so they didn't get to the story of the police attacking peaceful protesters. There were only a few reporters there, plus gazillions of cell phone camera footage. So again, that's wrong again. And it really is saying something if what you're saying is that the media set this whole thing up so they could get the story they wanted. I mean, it's just, wow, that is really, really a really low thought of the media. And remember, this is coming from Fox News, and it's coming from the finger, I suppose, of Mr. Rubio. And the other bit, they deliberately stayed to trigger police action. Now, I'm really not into this trigger language at all. Yes, some things upset some people, but you have to get over it. There are things that upset me. I have to get over it. So that trigger language is, well, it's a bit 21st century nonsense for me. But aren't the police professionals? Aren't they trained supposedly to remain calm and to bring a calming, lawful presence to wherever they go? So if the police can be triggered, then there is something wrong with their professionalism. And maybe if you are a police person who gets triggered when you're in those situations, maybe you're in the wrong job. And when I put that out there, because this is what Mr. Rubio has said, and I couldn't disagree with him more, because I think a lot of our police do a fine job. It's the rotten apples, and they really do need to be removed from the barrel. But if Mr. Rubio's right and it's a more systemic thing, then the whole training of our police needs to be rethought. Maybe it needs more depth. Maybe it needs to be longer. Maybe we need to do a better job at doing pre-tests as to how who should be eligible to become police in the first place. Just throwing that out there. So where does this leave us? Where are we with all this news and reporting, etc., etc.? Well, again, I want to go back to this multi-level idea of complication. That if you have a very simple idea of why this has happened and why it's happened now, then you're 100% wrong, because it's really complicated. This is over many people's lives of being targeted just because of the color of their skin. And this final action with Mr. Floyd is the straw that has broken the camel's back. If you think what that policeman did was justifiable, I have no words for people like you, because it was murder. You know, he may not have expected the person to die, but, you know, just look at his face. Just pause the video. If it's like, even if it's on TV, you can pause most and just look at that face. I'm not going to say I know what's behind his eyes, what's in his mind. But if other police condemn that action as being unlawful and not what your training has given you, I really feel sorry for that policeman and the other policemen and their families, and I cannot imagine what those families are going through. But a man is not coming home to his family. And he is in a long line of people who were just going about their lawful business, who were stopped, and then escalates into death. And that, there's something wrong there. Time and time and time again. And we as Christians, we are for justice. I think I mentioned this last week. I mentioned the baptismal promises we make. These are an oath, they're not optional. And we seek justice for everyone. And if it doesn't exist for everyone, well, justice doesn't exist at all. It's one of those all or nothing things. You know, I can't sort of sit around thinking, well, yeah, everything's fine for me. And it's the same with hunger in the world. You know, because I'm doing all right, Jack, doesn't mean to say that I have no responsibility for my brothers and sisters who don't have food, who don't have access to clean water, who don't have access to clean air, who may be working in some sweatshop somewhere, making the clothes that I don't mind paying not a lot for, because I don't want to pay more, because I don't want to pay to have those workers have a living wage. See how everything is really complicated? That even the act of buying one thing can be a source of oppression for somebody else somewhere. And we don't mean to do that. We really don't. But this is the connections that are in our world. These are the things which prop up some of these companies who make billions upon billions upon billions, but can't be bothered paying their workers a decent amount. Ah, well, it's a big problem, but together we could change it. I can't change it. Now, would I go to the protests? Well, certainly I would. So what's stopping me? COVID-19. I have a greater responsibility to my parish, to those people whom I meet week in, week out, than I can with hand on heart say, I have not put myself in harm's way. So there's no way that I have any kind of infection that I would unwillingly pass on to you. And the only way I can put my hand on my heart is by not going into situations where I do put myself at risk. So even in stores, I'm kind of a bit tetchy and concerned when somebody feels like, they've made the stores so you walk a one-way system, and some people just don't even notice. And if they have noticed, they don't care. Wow, you know, I just give them the stink eye, but in a Christian loving way. Behind it, there's a prayer, but it's irksome, and we should be trying to do our best amid this pandemic, even in situations like these. We need to try and do our best to support those who are seeking justice. We don't support those who are seeking to cause riots and to steal and to thieve and to cause violence on other people. They need to be arrested and go to jail. But for those who are wounded in heart and spirit, who are seeking a resolution to what causes this continual cycle of pain, I'm with them in spirit. So that is really heavy and really deep. And this is where we are on a Tuesday morning on the 2nd of June 2020. Who'd have thought it? Who would have thought in January that watching some old footage of people in a restaurant or people gathering in Busch Gardens or in Disney or NASCAR and thinking, wow, it looks really weird to see a whole bunch of people together. I mean, that's one of the things I thought about with the crowds in the various cities, even here, that they're all wearing masks, and quite often you get people who wear masks in those situations to try and hide their identity because they're going to be doing something horrible or naughty. But here it's the recognition of the COVID-19, and for those who are peaceful protesters, I pray God that they keep safe and do not get infected and do not pass it on to others. It would really be a shame that something that is just becomes a vector for the suffering and perhaps even death of others, because I'm sure that's not what they're trying to do. So let me change subject to this coming Sunday, which will be the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity. That mysterious doctrine that Orthodox Christians hold as to who God is. God is one, God is three. God is three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's indissoluble, and each one is perfectly unique, but they all are together. Now, within those few words, I've probably uttered a million heresies. So I think this is not a Faraday cage, but well, it'll have to do. But then that's the problem with something like a feast day like this, the Most Holy Trinity. So you may think, well, if it's so difficult to preach about, which it is, why do you do it? Well, because we hold it to be true, that God is one and God is three. And because it's true, even though it's impossible to talk about, it's still a part of what we believe, and it needs to be recognized as such. And we can pick through what the church fathers and what theologians and Bible scholars have said about the Holy Trinity throughout the millennia. And then we can say, well, this kind of makes sense, but this doesn't. And as soon as you hear the words in a sermon or in a book, if you read the words, the Holy Trinity is like, there's going to be heresy that needs to be backtracked, or what do they call it? Walked back, isn't that's the phrase they use nowadays, pretty rapidly. Now, I've kind of had a bit of fun with the idea of preaching on the Most Holy Trinity, and I've done my best to try and get somebody else to be the heretic. Well, I just sit there looking all pious and fully justified in my own faith while I hear this stuff being spouted from the pulpit. But it's not really like that, because I enjoy hearing other people preach, especially on difficult subjects like this. And I enjoy hearing people's takes on something I've been pondering since, well, ever since I grappled with the idea of the Holy Trinity. So, but it's my turn. I'll be preaching on Sunday. I have not got a clue in my head. We're on Tuesday, so that's not too bad as to what I'm going to say. But maybe I should just do, I don't know, some silence. God is like. And then, but even that's dangerous because lots of people will be having ideas of what they think, who they think God is and what God is like that are far from the biblical record of what God is like. Which kind of gives me a really good segue into doing some kind of little group sessions, kind of one-offs. I don't know whether it'll be done live or they'll be recorded, but I've asked Father Lewis because a lot of you have asked if Father Lewis will be taking part in any of my chats, and so I asked him, and he says, "Yeah, sure. Somebody's got to, correct your errors that you spout." Okay. So yes, Father Lewis and I will be doing it. I'm not so sure how it's going to be done yet, especially with the one camera. I suppose there's enough room to have the two of us on, and we don't have to social distance because we kind of see each other a million times a week. I don't know. Maybe it would have been more exciting if we had two cameras that we can go flick, flick, flick from one to the other. But I don't know. We'll work it out. Maybe we'll record it, at least, because there may be some stuff that we'll want to edit out for continuity's sake. And, those moments where we sort of go completely off topic. What? Us go off topic? You never do that. Yeah, right. So, yes, Father Lewis and I will be doing something, and it will be based on some of the ideas you've given us. And so, what is the first one going to be? Well, I can't remember who it was, but it was to do with that a lot of, well, not a lot, some commentators, some Christian commentators, preachers, pastors, talking mouths, whatever they call them, talking heads, have said that this pandemic is a judgment from God. So I'm not going to go down that road. So that will be the first topic. Is this pandemic a judgment from God? And when I'm not going to be a devil's advocate, and Father Lewis isn't going to be either. So it's not going to be the argument for that is this, and the argument against is this. We're going to use scripture. We're going to use the tradition of the church and its history and teaching, and we'll deal with it properly, and it will be hopefully interesting. And yes, Anne, this has been a heavy discussion because it is a heavy, multifaceted thing that we're dealing with this time. It needs to be dealt with head on, and some kind of Christian understanding brought to it. So thanks for mentioning that, Anne. Again, Jamie, please do contact me as soon as you can. And hi to Holly and Mike. Hope everybody's doing well. I've done 59 minutes now. We're coming to the last minute. So I'm getting to like the idea of doing a Tuesday morning coffee hour at 10 and then a Thursday afternoon tea at 3. So I'm going to keep with that. So if you are okay with that, I will sign off now. Hi, Donna. Thank you to all who've been watching live. If you're watching this live, thank you for sharing your time with me. I appreciate it. So the next time you'll see me is on Thursday at 3 o'clock for afternoon tea. Thursday the 4th, afternoon tea. Until then, please stay safe. If you need to talk to me about anything, please call me by phone, text, email. Phone and text are the more immediate. And God bless to you all. And I have to do this because I can't see where the button is to switch it off. Gosh, this is the bit you would edit out. Bye-bye for now.